What is one thing your parents did that you promised never to do with your own kids? Story 1. If I ever outsmarted my mom, it was considered attitude. I get her thought process. She of course had been around longer than a 13-year-old, so clearly there's nothing I could say to her she didn't already know, and she obviously knows better than me. My mom also never apologized. If it ever became clear she was in the wrong, she'd laugh and say she didn't remember saying that, or I must have had some sort of attitude, and that's why she acted upset. That is not the philosophy I will bring to my kids. It's gonna be a learning experience for the both of us. My dad would get mad at me sometimes too, and a lot of those times were warranted, and a lot were not. Anytime I proved him wrong, he'd apologize immediately and leave it at that. One time, when I was around 15, we were both being hard-headed and didn't speak for a night. In retrospect, I was the main hardhead, but he was a close second. He came in the next day and apologized anyway. He told me he was the adult in the situation, and he hadn't acted like one. He hated things being off with us, and he loved me. That is exactly how I hope to be with my kids. Story 2. Lecture. My mom could go on for hours for even small misbehaviors. Somehow, it usually looped around to how I didn't keep my room clean, even though the rest of the house was just as much of a mess or worse. When I need to have a stern or serious discussion with my kids, I force myself to make my point in 5 minutes or less. I've even said stuff like, "Look, this is taking way too long. Just don't do this loud thing again, okay?" I also apologize if I yell as soon as I am emotionally able to after an angry outburst. I don't remember mom ever doing that. Story 3. When I was 15, my dad, a medical doctor, decided to have a meeting with me to discuss my future and make a choice about what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a programmer so bad. I loved that. So I said programming, software engineering. He went on for over an hour about how that profession is lame and you'll always be behind the scenes unrecognized. This was back in 2004. How wrong was he? So I didn't know what to tell him. I remember my cousin, who was a few years older at the time, told me accounting would be a good fit for me if I didn't know what to pick. It would be easy for me and I'd fly through my degree. So I remembered that and said, "Alright, I'll go into accounting." He literally exploded in my face, yelling and shouting. How could I throw my future away? I was scared of him. I never was close to him. He barely spent time with me my entire life. This grown-ass man was never there for me, but decided to control my life. I knew what he wanted me to say. I just wanted the yelling and shouting to stop, and I wanted him to calm down. So I said defeatedly, "Okay, I'll be a doctor." He immediately turned around, smiled happily, and congratulated me. I felt what it's like to have a part of me die that day. I wasted 3 years of my life on med school before I was like, F this. Got depressed and asked my sister to help me convince him to transfer over to engineering school, but my life was never the same, and my psyche was changed as well. I easily give up now, become more irritable, can't sleep well at all, etc. Story 4. I have two. I would not be making fun of their interests and hobbies. It's why I don't like showing anyone my artwork, but I will do anything to support my kids and encourage them. If they tell me something in confidence, I'm not using that as a topic of conversation with others. Tell my parents anything and everyone knows. My mom just couldn't understand why I was getting mad when she was telling any Yahoo at Walmart the whole story of events leading up to my divorce. Both are why my mom wonders why I don't tell her anything. I don't want that for my kids. Edit. I want to give a big hug to everyone who has responded with their own experiences. Let's all live our dreams. Story 5. Mine was complaining about her marriage to me. from when I was probably around 8 or 9 into my teens. In some ways, I think it really messed me up, for multiple reasons. Aside from it being wrong to emotionally depend on a kid, it made me feel like I was going crazy sometimes. She would rant to me about him while we were alone, but when he would come home from work, and then she would be all smiles, asking about his day. It was beneficial for her because she got it out of her system, but it left me emotionally exhausted, having all of it dumped on me, and then watching them play happy families. Having said that, they did use to argue a lot too. I don't think my mom appreciates what a bad idea it was bad-mouthing not only my dad but men in general. Through disapproving of the things he did, she basically just lumped men into one category. I can remember being 14 and thinking all men were awful because she had drilled it into me. Even though my dad definitely wasn't perfect, I still could have had some sort of relationship with him. It's a strange situation because I feel like she turned me against him, but despite her being the one who actually resents him in many ways, the relationship is okay and I'm the one who has an awkward relationship with him. I mean, it goes through periods of being fine, but I feel like it's pretty fractured overall, and saying their relationship is okay isn't high praise. I still think they would have been better splitting years ago, but I guess they're comfortable now. Anyway, even as a kid, I would say to my mom I don't think she should be telling me that stuff, but she would say she had no one else to talk to. That always made me feel bad, which isn't fair at all. Get a marriage counselor, not dump it all on your kid. Story 7. Mom used to go every day to the 7-Eleven and get me a lunch of powdered donuts, a pop and some chips. Every so often, a sandwich in those little plastic triangles, or a chocolate bar. I used to think it was cool, but even at 12, I knew something was up. I remember my teacher came one time to me and said, "Don't you ever have anything healthy?" I laughed it off, but it felt like what she did was a bad thing to do to a kid. Story 7. Having too many pets in the house. I loved them all, but at the highest we had 11 cats and 3 dogs, and it was just kind of embarrassing, and I never wanted to bring people over to my house. Comment: I had a girlfriend who lived in a home like that back in high school. Cats, dogs, ferrets, tarantulas, fish, turtles, so many pets. But I loved it because I lived in a house where I wasn't allowed to have pets, because my mom can't send animals. One time I asked Santa for a puppy. Christmas morning I got a puppy. I was so happy. Then my parents told me that I couldn't keep it, because my mom's best friend was allergic, which was true, and that Santa hadn't known that. So I only had it for a week. When I was old enough to understand Santa and I recalled that memory, that hit me hard. It was almost cruel to get a kid a puppy and then take it away. Story 8. My mom would redo things without explaining why, and my dad would just do them for me without letting me try. As an adult, I nearly panic when someone is trying to teach me something and I start to struggle. The only thing I feel like I can handle at that point is to be left alone for a while to figure it out by myself. Comment: I sometimes wonder if I was affected by the same kind of thing. Not exactly the same, but essentially, when I was a kid, my mom would tell me to clean my room and make my bed. I'd do exactly that to the best of my ability. Then I'd go to her so she could tell me if I was done. It almost never changed. She'd tell me that my room wasn't clean enough and my bed wasn't made enough. Then I was left to try to figure out what I was missing. I would try straightening things more, then get her again, and she'd tell me the room still wasn't clean enough and the bed not made enough. I would just feel baffled because I had no idea what more I could do before it was enough. I felt like there was some sort of invisible mess that she could see, but somehow I couldn't. I couldn't understand what I was missing, and it would never be explained to me exactly what still needed to be straightened up or what part of my bed still needed to be made. So now, as an adult, in just about any context, I often have this underlying self-doubt that I'm missing something, somehow, and I can't trust myself to know when I've done enough. Story 9. My parents fought a lot around me, and I hated it growing, and do not want to subject my kids to that. I remember one time when I was about 8 years old, I was in the car with my parents. They were arguing like always, but being trapped in that metal box with both of them screaming back and forth became too much. We stopped at a red light and I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car and started running. My mom, who was in the passenger's seat, ran out after me, and after he pulled over the car, my dad did as well. They caught up to me and their attitudes completely changed. They promised me they wouldn't fight in front of me again. A promise they broke time and time again until their divorce. I'm hoping I can do a better job of keeping my promise. Before the last story, you can check the description, comment about the stories that you had similar to this, and maybe like and subscribe. I have more videos like this on my channel. Story 10. My parents kept using "because I said so." I always have a reason why I ask my kids to do something. If they ask why, I'll explain. I'll explain my reason for my reason, and various other factors I considered. I can go on for a while. They know this. The other day, I asked my 7-year-old to do something. She said, "Why?" I thought about it for a second and asked, "Is because I said so a good enough reason?" She thought about it for a second and said, "Yeah." For about 3 seconds, I felt like I nailed parenting. I think you will like the video that's showing on the screen, and you could also check my channel and subscribe for more. Have a pleasant rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one.